Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 7 of Mondays with Mooch. Yesterday, I sat down with Carlos from Wild on Twos on his channel, and we discussed how to find a club that you get along with, whether you're trying to join or be a supporter, finding a club that's the right fit for you. So, check it out. Let me know what you think. Leave comments or questions in the comment box. Click the like button, share it, help me get it out there. And also, please visit and support my sponsors: Roadhouse Harley Davidson, Espinosa's Leather, Condemned Labs, KO Defendant, Crimeware Inc., and DB Gear. All those guys take great care of us, so please make sure that you track them down and support them as well.
Yo,
Thanks,
¿cómo
guys.
están? It's Wild on Twos with Mooch. And here we got another good topic. Of course, we always talk a lot before we even start recording. And this week's topic, we decided to pick choosing the right club to join or support. And I know that a lot of guys, and he gets probably a lot of comments or people asking about how do they even find clubs? How do they choose a club? Where do they look? How could they locate a club? And if you want to get started with some things, of course, I can jump in. But I mean, if I came to you and like, hey, Mooch, I've never ridden before. I just started riding, but I mean, I want to get involved and learn about the motorcycle club scene. You know, maybe I watch Sons of Anarchy. I don't know, like everybody says, right? And I'm like, hey, I want to go. What would you say to me? What would be like your talk?
Yeah, I mean, my first advice would be really get comfortable riding because, even as a hang around or a guest or supporter, if you're in the pack, you're expected to keep up. And, any major club or people have been doing this for a while are pretty proficient at riding and pretty used to, how we act with each other in the pack and all that. So that would be the most important part starting would be just go out and ride and get comfortable riding. That's definitely would be the starting point. The big difference too is nowadays a lot of people hit us up on social media, and that obviously that's a little different, but a lot of people hit me up, hey, how do I join, how do I find a guy from this club or that club? And that's entirely different because if I already know you and we're already in town and we're riding around and I'm seeing you out and about, that's going to be a lot different scenario than someone out of the blue hitting us up, you know what I mean, on social media or on Instagram or whatever. So there's kind of different layers to it on that level. But I would say the start would be just learn how to ride your motorcycle, be proficient at riding your motorcycle. At the end of the day, no matter what patch you wear, it's a motorcycle club, and pretty much every major club is very proficient at riding.
Yeah, I mean, just today, I even we were riding back from Houston, and we saw three guys riding, and you can tell they were trying to be organized. The guy in the front kept turning off, cutting another car off, leaving those two guys behind. Then those guys were trying to keep up, and then one guy in the back was just very almost pushing the other guy. He was trying to get like side by side, almost pushing off the other guy, to the other lane.
Right.
You can tell they weren't comfortable, and something happened to one of the bikes, but the other guy was so far, pulling ahead that he didn't see. So that's one guy pulls over about half a mile later. Everybody starts kind of going off to the pool, but they're all almost like a mile apart on the shoulder. I mean, that's
Yeah.
how it looked like, and you can tell that they were just not comfortable riding with each other. I think there's friends that started. Maybe one of the guy was probably a more veteran rider, the guy in the front, but then I think he was showing off. One
Right.
of the guys was trying to. You can tell he was trying to keep up, and the guy in the middle was probably nervous about the other guy trying to stay side by
Right.
side with them.
And
So
that's
that,
kind
that
of the scary
yeah,
part. It can get dangerous really quick, and that's why we need to be able to trust who's riding next to us. I've got a lot of guys that, like my twin brother, for example, I've been riding with for so long that I know, okay, here's how he's going to react if there's a tire in the road, or hey, if this car's about to cut us off, or hey, we're taking this next exit, or we know the hand signals. So there's that comfortability level that comes up for riding with the same people so many times versus being the new guy. And then
right.
if you add in being the new guy that doesn't know how to ride very well, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure at that point.
Yeah, that's going to be probably one of our videos in the near future too. Is about how to learn how to ride side by side, or what's the best ways to do that. But that'll be a later video. And
Right.
one of the things I always talk about, same thing as you talk about, people always picking the right club. I mean, I've made that mistake before. Of You kind of pick a club before you see the club. It's more of like you see the name, you see the history, and then but you probably it's not even the club itself, right? I keep saying club, and it's a nation of a club, but then
Right.
chapters are all individual, and they all have their different quirks and personalities. So you have to mesh well with those guys in that chapter, even though you might have met another chapter and those guys are cool as shit. The ones that in your town might be totally different. So, I mean, how would you explain for someone to actually go and what would be like the best fit for them to think about in choosing a club?
Yeah, and I think I touched on this in one of our last or a couple of videos ago, but really my takeaway, because I did the same thing too. I jumped into it real fast. I was just enamored by the lifestyle. The first club that was interested in me, I joined, and then looking back, I was like, wow, I really wish I would have taken some more time and gotten to figure this out. Because my takeaway was, at one point I was sitting there in the clubhouse looking around, and I was like, man, if it wasn't for this patch, I have nothing in common with anybody in this room. These aren't people I would barbecue with, go see a movie with, hit up at the end of the day to see how their day went. Like, we didn't have that connection. And that's what's moving forward from there. That was what was most important with me. And that was kind of my checkpoint when I was in other chapters or different regions was, are these people that I would hang out with, patch or no patch? And I think that's probably the most important part. And the only way to figure that out is by spending time with them. So, those guys that rush into it, or I can tell you how many guys come up and tell you right away they want to prospect, and you're like, man, you don't even know anybody yet. So that's probably a very big part of it, is making sure that you have other things in common outside of the motorcycle.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably one of the most awkward things. I've been to club houses, and when you go in there, someone picked the music. You can tell only like three people might like that type of music.
Right.
The rest of the group doesn't, and then they're all in their little cliques within a clique, and it's kind of an awkward area that you're like, okay, it almost seems like no one really matches their personalities, and it does look strange. And then you see, I've been in a clubhouse that the guys, it doesn't mean that they all look alike, but they have the same traits.
Yep.
They have something in common that they can relate with somebody in each person in that club. And it's more of like a brother, right? Like a real brother in a way. Like, you probably won't mesh totally well. You love your brother because your brother. You have some similarities, some traits, but no one's gonna be 100% perfect.
Right.
It's just like we say about relationships, right? No one's gonna be perfect, but is being willing to live with their the negatives. At the end of the
And
day, yeah.
working on the communication aspect. I mean, that's the same for both too, but it's different when you're new, but once you get going, being comfortable going to your brothers and talking to them about the issues, or if they're, whether it's personal beef or just issues you have in general with the whole club, but being the man that can actually speak up is going to, it's going to help a ton, versus the guy that goes behind people's back or holds a grudge or whatever. So I mean, that's another big part too, is just being a man and being able to talk about how you feel and what's going on.
So one of the things I tell somebody, so I had a couple of people ask me, or several people ask me, and then I tell people, what's your goal? What's your end goal with this? Is there a goal, like is there a purpose that you want to join that motorcycle club, or is there a purpose that you need? And that's when I talk about, there's different types of clubs, right? You have riding clubs, MCs, against child abusers. There's animal, clubs out
Right.
there that so if there's a cause and that gives you a goal to actually want to do something, and like there's these fundraisers and events geared toward fundraising charities that you really love, and then probably you're going to like that if that's what you like. if
Right.
if a motorcycle club is more about themselves, just going to chapter events and party, and if that's what you're about, then awesome, that's what but if you're that person that's like, oh no, I don't like riding that far, I don't
Right.
like riding far, I like riding maybe more a little local, and then the one that club that is traveling far. And just like you said, you need to find a way to get to know that club itself. They're going to get to know you, see how they act, see what you see. Don't be in the rush. Take your time. I don't care if it's several years of just hanging around, not official hanging around, just hanging around the club scene
Right.
and seeing the club. But then the next thing is like, where do you run into people, right? Because I mean, if I asked you, hey, there's a club I saw, but I don't see anybody here, but I know they have a chapter. How do I go about doing that?
Right.
What would you say?
So that's a tough one too, because I'll tell you, a big pet peeve of mine is, if you're a chapter in a new area, or maybe even been there for a while, and you're super active, or in your head you're super active, right? We're always out, we're on the patch. It never fails that you're going to run into someone that's like, oh, I didn't know you guys were here. I never seen you. So, to you, you're like, oh, we're going out all the time. But then you realize, like we were talking about earlier, you might be that chapter that's always going to the same bar all the time. So
Same
yeah,
bar.
maybe you're active, but you're not being active around the area. Um, and plus, when you're out looking for stuff, it's usually hard to find. So, a lot of, like I said, a lot of times people will reach out on social media. I would, you look for flyers for events, and I know that can be intimidating. So sometimes it's like, maybe they're hosting an event at a Harley dealership, or at a bike night, or something that's a little more like friendly to the public. So you're not just showing up to a clubhouse event. But trying to find those public events starting to be a familiar face. You're showing up, you're riding around. I know, a lot of stories I heard about guys back in the days. They'd be like, oh, this club hangs out at this bar, and they would start showing up. And that shows the type of man you are on several different levels. A, you got the balls to do it, and B, you're consistent. Because that's the other point, a really important part about hanging around and taking your time is to see if you can match the activity level at the level of club you're trying to join, right? So like you said, if it's a charity stuff or if it's, family club, whatever, everyone has different activity levels. And, you and I could sit here and talk about it and say, oh yeah, I can do it. I can do it. But until you're physically doing it and trying to keep up, you're not going to know how it fits in with your life, different work schedules, your relationship status, whatever. There's a lot of things that come into play with how active you can be as a member. And some clubs require to be super active and some don't. So that, figuring out the activity level is going to be a really important part as
Yeah,
well.
and that's what I tell people. I tell the guys, hey, number one, look in the mirror, look at yourself. What's your work schedule like? Number one, are you a guy that works all the fucking time, but you have kids, you have a wife, probably already getting shit that you work a lot. Now you want to endure joining a motorcycle club that's going to take more time away from your family. And so I tell people to look at your life, how your life is already. Do you have time and able to do stuff? And then you can start kind of, that helps you pick a club almost, knowing your time limits. Like if your wife is someone that is demanding the time, you have kids, you work a lot, joining a big club probably is not it's not for you, or for a club that is always really active and you have to be there and there's a
Yeah.
lot of restrictions. Same thing with talk to your wife. I know it sounds dumb, but I know a lot of guys that, oh, their wives won't let them, they say. And then there's guys like, oh, I'll do what I want to do, right? Um, and those are the guys that start later in life. They
Yep.
probably, for some reason, I don't know if it's a midlife crisis, or maybe they always wanted to and they just said, F it. I want to try to do this before I only live this life once. You really do have to really talk with your spouse of and be really overly brutally honest. When a lot of guys lie, oh, it's only one day a week I go to the clubhouse,
Right. It's the
maybe.
National
Oh
Guard all of a sudden.
yeah, oh yeah, and one weekend a month we go to an event. No, you tell them, no, I probably have to be there 3 to 4 times a week. I probably have to go almost every weekend. I rather overdo it, oversay something, and then the old lady say, all right, cool,
Right.
or she'll be straightforward with you, and she says she doesn't like it. Guess what? She's not going to like it.
No, the old lady part's super important because even say you're the guy that says, I don't care what she thinks, right? Because that's what a lot of these guys are going to say. They're like, whether they are or not. But if every time you leave the house without her, it's an argument, what kind of member are you going to be or prospect are you going to be when you're constantly checking your phone? You're in a bad mood because you guys are fighting, whatever. I mean, that plays a lot into it too. So even just because you can't bring her doesn't mean it's not going to be an issue, right? I've seen prospects where their chick will show up to the event because they haven't been answering the phone, or you want to be that guy. So the other part too is figuring out how involved you want your partner to be in this, right? So, there's family clubs where every time you go, you can bring your chick. And then some of the majors where when you go, you don't, you wouldn't bring them, so finding out that too. And that's from asking questions, but it's also just from hanging around and seeing like, hey, do these guys often have their girls with them? Do they not? Is this more family related? And that's kind of judging that activity level where you want to jump in at.
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly one of the first things I think everybody should do. So I think it should be a mix of really, the riding, like you said, do you ride a motorcycle? If you just got your license, you took the course and you're going to buy a bike, uh, like to say, try to crawl before you walk or run, get on the bike, ride that bike, get comfortable with your bike, make sure the bike will work for you. That's another topic. We can talk about the bikes and the MCs and stuff, but learn how to ride, know your lifestyle, and then what you're looking to get out of it. The whole thing is it's a lifestyle. That's lifestyle. It's supposed to be something that you can be into for a marathon. It's long term. It's not just to like we talked about jiu-jitsu, getting the blue belt and being done. A lot of
Right.
people, once they get blue belt, that's usually the belt that most people just kind of quit at. They think they get some skills there enough, and they said, "Oh, I did it," and then they leave.
Right. And
So
depending on what state you are in, the thing now is motorcycle clubs are really popular, right? So there's likely a club that is the right fit for you. So if you're not jumping into one, you can find that club, but you have to be honest with yourself again about activity level, your riding ability, what you're willing to do and not do. Because the other part too is like you brought up the spouse part. Well, there's a lot of people that will join when they're single, and then they'll get a girl and they'll be an entirely different person. So, you have to be honest with yourself about that too. Hey, am I doing this to fill a void because I'm bored? Am I doing this because I'd be doing the same thing with a partner? So there's a lot of self-reflection that comes into deciding what level of club you want to be in, and you're going to have to be honest with yourself about it, because otherwise
Yeah.
you're going to set yourself up for failure.
And don't say yes to the first club that starts inviting you out. I think I was telling you, I mean, just like when you get to a city, you're the new guy in the city, and it's a city full of support clubs. Because now there's even support clubs, right? I mean, there's so many levels that you can think about. It's about like we keep saying about clubs, but we're talking about also support clubs, because there's a
Yep.
lot of support clubs in areas. Then once they see you post a writing video or picture on a Facebook page, they're going to reach out to you and invite you to one of their little events. And it's great. Go see them. Go, check them out, but don't say yes right away, because they're trying to feel you out. And there's some places that just like recruiting, and they do a shotgun approach, and they try to
Right.
just recruit a bunch of people just without even really caring about their history or anything, just to come in, and they'll start getting to know them. But it's good for them, because they're a lot of support clubs try to build to look good for the bigger club
Right.
and move up through their stages. So you got to remember, if are you a pawn in this game, or are you they're truly really vested in someone that they're trying to get and call brother.
Right.
So yeah, so my thing is like, say yes to a bunch of them just to go, not to join, but I'm saying to go visit, go to the open houses, like Mooch said, go to a Harley event, go to charity poker rides. You'll go, a lot of CLC will have events and stuff that people can go, and you see different clubs that you never even heard of. And don't worry if a club is not a big known club. It could be a little mom and pop club, and that might be the best fit for you. But a
Right.
lot of people worry about the patch on the back and want a big name on their back, and they lose sight of who they are and who they are going to mesh with.
Right. And you got to understand why that patch has that name to it, right? There's a lot of sacrifices that came to make that club the, quote unquote major or the dominant or whatever. There's a lot of work a lot of people put into that. It's not an overnight thing. So, you have to have respect for the history of that club as well as where they came from. And I think that's another important part too, is you have to know your area. Before you pick a club, know your area. Know the area's history. Is there only a couple clubs here? Is there a lot of clubs? Is there a dominant club? Is there clubs here that don't get along with other clubs? Because you need to know what you're signing up for, right? It would be a bummer to jump into a club and then realize they have beef with everyone in the area, and all of a sudden your lifestyle changes. You can't go to the grocery store or the gym without bumping into people. So, a lot of people are willing to sign up for that, and that's all well and good if that's your case, but you need to know it before you make that decision. So part of that is just really looking into it. I also think another really important part is I'm a firm believer of what you see is what you get. Whether I know clubs are secretive, and as a hang around, you might not know the inner workings, but you'll see how they act on a day to day basis. So, like we talked about in our last videos, like, are they posted up and doing security? Are they super loose and not paying attention? Do they get fall down drunk every time you see them? Are they sober? Are they super serious? Is their security on point? How do they ride in a pack? Like, there's so many things to look at to see if that's the right fit for you. Because if me personally, if I showed up to hang around, everything was super disorganized, like, well, this might not be for me, but some people might be into that. So really just hang around and observe, be that observer to see, is this something that I agree with and would get along with?
Right, and just like you said, safety it's a big point for a lot of people. It does the club, like I said, maybe the road captain go around before a ride with a bunch of people and make sure everybody check their tires, make sure everybody has enough fuel, make sure just keep things and give like almost like a pregame during the ride. And if this happens, this what we're gonna do. Like if are they
Yep.
structured, or is it just like, hey, everybody go and just follow the guy in front of you, type of
Yeah.
thing?
And those are the types of things to notice, because that'll cue you to how structured or organized that club is. And, I don't, I can't speak for everyone, but I'll say a lot of us came into this lifestyle because we like the structure. There's a lot of ex-military guys or guys from gangs or whatever that like the hierarchy and the structure. So, it's something I would be looking at when I come around. If that's what I like, do these guys seem disciplined? Do they have a lot of rules? Do their rules make sense? Am I that guy that's always in trouble for breaking the rules? Well, this might not be for me. So really just paying attention, coming around and paying attention is a super important part to see if it's going to be a good fit.
Yeah, because just like mostly every club started off really organized, but over time some clubs got pretty lax, or chapters, and when people get a little lax, safety gets it's a concern on rides, and those are the ones that late night too, letting someone ride home drunk or something. You can see how people react and act in different situations, and you want to make sure Now the second part, I just had to skip right away because I was going to forget this point. Even though that you don't care and you want to sign up, okay, I don't mind if I'm have all these beefs with all these different clubs, but remember that you're going to be riding with your old lady on the bike. She's going to make maybe some rides with you. You're going to have kids with you. So do you want to bring your kids into and family member into an unsafe place, or worried that one day you're going to get knocked off your bike with your old lady?
Right.
Or I mean, those are things you got to think about, not just for yourself. If you have a family, if you don't, then it doesn't matter. Then
Right.
you can, but it's just more than yourself.
Well, and I think it's important to considering where you came from beforehand, right? So if you came
Right.
from gang stuff or whatever, you might understand that. But if you didn't, there's so many people in this culture that say, okay, well, yeah, if I see the other club, I'm with my boys and we're at an event. But you forget about the time where you're just out by yourself, or maybe you're not wearing your patch and you're at Walmart. You know what I mean? Those are just as dangerous situations if you're in an area that you don't recognize or that's dominated by another club where everyone's like, oh, yeah, I signed up for this, I'm down. Well, it's a lot different when you're by yourself. And that's another thing to take into consideration. If I'm joining a club, how many people are in my area? How active are they in my area? Are we barbecuing? Are we going out? Am I only seeing them, once a week? Are they only going to the same bar? There's so many things that play into this that you wouldn't know without spending time with them.
And like we always say, and we say repeatedly, if you want to be that guy that, hey, we ride because of the freedom of the ride and no rules, and then don't join a club. The club is
Right.
the most rules you're ever going to see is in the club. The most structure you're going to see is in the club. Even
100%.
silly structures that you never even thought about is going to be in the club. So if you even hate being told what to do or what to wear, where to go, do not join a MC. I
Yep.
mean,
There's no
that
club out there where you can do whatever you want. At
no.
least I'm aware.
Yeah, no. I mean, if there is, then that they're the ones that are running into issues and giving a bad name. And for the big clubs in the areas, a lot of times there's a lot of control on clubs, and people call it patch policing and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, they represent anyone that wears a patch represents whoever the bigger club in the area is to a point. Anything happens, they're going to make it look like it was them in the way that's what the perception is going to be like. So they like regulating the areas, of course. Um, but it goes back. I mean, we just want to have fun, ride, be around a group of guys that you can relate to, hang out with, call family. Because as guys, I'll tell you what, that for men, I think, in my opinion, it's harder for us when you're busy with work and everything to actually have true friends and make friends.
Right. For sure.
We, I tell people all the time, I'm like, in all these years in the areas, I can probably count a couple guys that I'm really close to. Other than that, I just work all the time and did my thing, and you don't really make that many friends compared to, I mean, women work hard too now and they work a lot of hours, but they sometimes do a lot of more social things. Or the gym, when they go to the gym, they meet more girls compared to the guys. When we go to the gym, I mean, I think, it's more like straightforward myself, independent. So for a lot of guys, like, and you grew up playing either sports, military, or were part of a gang, that was the closest family you had, or friendships, and then you kind of miss that.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's kind of the natural progression you see a lot, right? And those are usually the guys that get along well in clubs because they're already kind of used to that lifestyle of being told what to do and the structure and where to go, and you understand why. You're on top of security. The hard part is, and it's not that you couldn't be a good club member if you don't have that history. It's just there's more to learn, right? Because it's a
yeah.
whole different culture. It's something entirely different. You got to start thinking about. It's a different mindset altogether. And that's usually the people I see struggle or the ones that weren't involved in, team sports or gangs or whatever, military, where they have that brotherhood. Because a lot of people want the brotherhood, and I get that. But people also need to understand you can have that without wearing a patch. If your goal is I just want to drink and ride and have fun with my friends, then just drink and ride and have fun with your friends. There's absolutely no need to put a patch on your back at all.
No,
And I
zero.
think
Yeah,
about,
yeah,
go
that's the
ahead.
whole that's my head. Like, and the whole point technically is if you hear everybody about clubs, they say the same thing. Oh, we just want to ride with our brothers, have fun, do our thing. You don't need a patch for that.
No, and in fact, it makes it a lot harder to do that when you're wearing a patch because so many more things come with it. And no matter what club you're in, there's going to be politics with it. There's going to be, law enforcement messing with you in certain areas, depending on where you're at, potentially other clubs messing with you. There are just so many things that come to wearing a patch that, if you're not 100% sure, you're not 100% on board with it, then don't do it
Yeah.
because then you're going to
Well,
wash out and burn some serious bridges too. And
yeah.
that's a rough part for sure.
Yeah, same thing. I mean, even before you go, I always tell people go on some rides that you see some, not even riding clubs, but they have rides around. Like the Harley has a ride out. They do some weekends.
Right.
Meet some guys that way. You can maybe make your own little writing groups, writing clubs. I think about 98% of people in MCs should belong to writing clubs.
Yep.
I mean, like, a really high percentage of people in MCs should really be in writing clubs, because that's what nowadays we work so much, do so many things that it's really hard to, and that's why the attrition rate is high in regards of dropout. Usually, no more than 5 years, you don't see people stay in clubs
Yep.
because it's
Yeah,
hard to
which
keep
is
up. Yeah.
culturally a big difference from how it used to be, right? I mean, we grew up hearing about guys that have been in 30, 40 years. But for some, I mean, there's probably various reasons, but that's definitely something to look into too. I think another important part is, because I think this is kind of a plague and cancerous for our scene, but be prepared to prospect, and not just be prepared, but if that's the club you're hanging around with, watch how they treat their prospects. Because some clubs, they're whatever the history is. Some talk down to or demean their prospects, some don't. Some you're a gopher, some you're not. So know what you're signing up for. You don't want to say, "Hey, I'm going to join this club," be all excited to prospect. The next thing you know, you hate everybody because of how they treat you, right? So as a hang around or as a guest, watch how they treat their prospects and see, is this something I'm willing to go through? Because I think when I say it's a plague or it's a problem, what I think a lot of people do is they see that and they decide, I don't want to prospect. And that you hear them all, we hear everyone say it, right? Like, oh, ain't no one going to treat me like a bitch or this and that, which we all know isn't the case. But in either way, they're scared to prospect. So then they make up their own patch or they start their own club. And the inherent issues that come with that are ridiculous and not worth it. But a lot of it, I believe, comes from people that just aren't willing to prospect.
Well, a lot of times when I see guys, let's say, didn't prospect and want to start their own club because they think it's easier. It's hard to start a club. Really hard. It's probably harder to start a club technically than prospect. But then it's trial by error. You're gonna make so many fuck ups,
Yep.
spend so much time and effort, sacrifice. And I get it, but I mean, a lot of people think it's going to be easier. You're walking up you're running up a big hill,
Yeah, you're
starting a
starting
club.
at the bottom of it too. Like
Yeah.
in a club, you're going to utilize other people's experiences, the history. You can learn from others. Doing it on your own, again, you're likely doing it because you don't know better. So you're learning everything from jump, and it rarely lasts. It rarely works out, right? So that's a big piece to it as well. And a lot of those people are the people that don't know their surroundings or what the big clubs are, and then all of a sudden they have an issue because they made up a patch and didn't know better. Because sitting around drinking, everyone's going to say, "Oh, no one's going to tell me what to do. I can do what I want. Oh, I don't care." But once it's happened, once it's come to your front door, watch how quick those guys drop. Because all of a sudden, oh, I didn't sign up for this, or oh, my lady's tripping, whatever. Everyone will have a reason. Versus joining a club that's already been true and tried and tested, you know that those guys with you are going to be with you.
Yeah. Or not if it's if a club you started, but you're in the middle of nowhere, you know, and no one's around to do it. I mean, it's going to be different than if you're in a big city with a crap load of clubs,
Right.
crap load of like major clubs. There's usually more in majority of areas. There's so many big clubs now that you can get a so-called blessing from one. It doesn't mean anything to the other.
Yep.
And then, but like I said, getting back to the whole basis thing, I think it's what Mooch was saying and we're saying is make sure that number one, how to ride a bike, have a bike is before anything. Try to see what you could give up in your life to join, if you can even join a club. Because maybe if you're like, well, I do work all the time, stressed out already about my time. I don't take care of myself well. I don't work out because I don't. They say I don't have time. But if you think you're going to make time for the motorcycle club, you're probably not. It might last just a little bit. Same thing when you start being around a club, act like you're gonna. I tell people don't overstay your welcome in regards of don't go staying out to 3 in the morning every single time if you're not going to keep that going throughout the whole process. Be who you're going to be. If you're the guy that goes home at 10 p.m., be that guy that goes home at 10 p.m. and tells everybody, hey guys, I'm going to go, or I don't really drink much. I don't drink anymore. Be straightforward with them. And that's who they're going to be used to. But if you're going balls to the wall in the beginning and suddenly you stop and slow down. Now you show up only once a week. You still don't stay out late. Now it's not going to look good.
And you're disappointing people. I mean, set those expectations for yourself, or set your baseline early. It's like you're saying, if I came in strong because I'm trying to prove myself to everyone, and then I get my patch, and all of a sudden I'm not coming out anymore, you're disappointing a lot of people. You're letting a lot of people down because they voted for the guy that was super active. Oh yeah, I can count on him. He's always there. So try, like you were saying, if you're that guy that goes home at 10, then consistently go home at 10. Because that way, hey, one night you stay till midnight, we're happy, but I'm not mad if you leave. Versus if you were always there and all of a sudden now you're leaving early, you're going to be disappointing a lot of people. A lot of people are counting on you for something that other than you really are.
Yeah, and we're probably going to end it now. It's going to be 30 minutes, and but I think I'm going to just finish with, especially when you're prospecting. This is for people that already picked the club, going to prospect. At the end of the day, when you're getting, let's say you're going to get patched, are you excited? You want to be excited, not because you're getting the patch, but I'm patching into this chapter of this club with these guys,
Yeah, your
right?
family.
There's people are in love with the patch and don't give a fuck because one, they got treated like shit the whole time, right? So then now these members expect you to be loving them, but the whole time they've been treating you like shit. You're more vested because it's almost like you won a trophy, right? This patch is my trophy, and you're happy about this patch, but not really the chapter itself. And then it's not that club is not for you.
Right.
If you're excited about the guys that you'll be so proud to be a member of this club, but not only the club of this chapter of that chapter, that's when you know you're in the right club.
Yeah, and I would say, one thing we haven't touched on a ton, but definitely your region is what's important, right?
Oh
Knowing
yeah.
the history of your area and your region, because there's a lot of dominant clubs in this country that started in, say, a specific state. And if you're in that state, you're likely to be attracted that way. If you're trying to choose where to support or whatever, obviously, most likely you're going to go with, hey, I've grown up with some of these guys, I've known these guys, so that's easy. Where it gets challenging, or people are saying, hey, how do I choose or whatever, you're likely in one of those states that either doesn't have a major club, or it's a relatively new state for some of these clubs, because you'll notice like the club I was in is a little different in their home base versus they are in other states. And I'm sure most clubs are like that, even the region you're in versus those guys versus somewhere else. So understanding too, okay, how far am I from the mother chapter, or their main base? Where are most of their events at when they're doing nationals and regionals? How far is that from me? Those are things to really take into consideration too, because you might fall in love with the name or be enamored and then realize you're 1,500 miles away and you don't have the support and the backup you were hoping for, and you're traveling all the time to go to the parties. And that's something I think often gets overlooked, because you might think, oh, because I see this top rocker, these are all the same, but likely every region's a little different.
That's so true. I mean, especially like if you're the only chapter in the state, like I said, there is not going to be as fun as if you have multiple chapters not that far away. That every other weekend you can go to an event,
You got
meet up
stuff
with
to
the
do.
guys, go night big rides. That's a lot more fun for me than if I'm like, hey, there's no one around me in the whole. How many states, So then you're
Right.
going to be traveling maybe once in the blue moon across a bunch of states, and it kind of slows down the lust of club life
Yeah.
itself.
And you're kind of missing that, like you said, that the community bond, or like having more chapters in one area. I know from personal experience, when I started the club I was in Oregon, if there was six of us, I was like, oh man, this is huge. This is great. And then I moved to California and I couldn't go 5 blocks without seeing someone from my club. And like there was something to do every single weekend. And then I felt super bought in and invested to that club and that patch, because it wasn't just me and these four other guys.
Yeah.
I was part of something bigger and broader, and it was outside of my chapter. And there's just so much more to it. And I think that's something to really consider, especially if you're trying to be a supporter. Don't be that guy in Northern California that picks a club that's from the East Coast, right? Like whatever. But know your area, know you're supporting. Otherwise it's going to be an uphill battle, and you're just going to be setting yourself up for failure for no reason whatsoever, especially as a supporter.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with being a support in the support club.
Yep.
There's some great support clubs, as you know. But then at the end, because it's all about requirements too. There's like the major club might have more requirements and time requirements compared to a support club,
Yeah.
and
And it's
then
a
also
great place
money.
to learn. It's a great foundation to learn. Some of the best members we had in the club I was in came from the support club first, because
Oh
like
yeah,
we were saying, maybe they didn't come from the same background as we were talking about earlier. So they got their toes wet in the support club. And there's a lot of guys that think, oh, I don't have what it takes to be in a one percenter club. I don't have the commitment. And they join a support club and they're super active and they're planning events. And all of a sudden they realize, hey, it's not that much different. I can do this. And they step up and they become great members. So there's a lot of knowledge to gain from going through the support club system first, if that's available in your area. But I
yeah.
think that's a pretty big positive as well.
But just guys, remember that there's thousands of clubs out there. There's clubs for anything you can think of, from animal abuse, child abuse, from just riding clubs, religious clubs. I don't know, God knows what clubs. I mean, there's clubs for everybody, for even just riding clubs. Nothing wrong about being in the riding club. Nothing
Right.
wrong with that. And like you said, one of the different things is, I was just circling back. You said about the way you grew up, and there's people that actually maybe never had a father figure, brothers, that actually love that structure because it's the most structure they ever had. I know
Yep.
guys that were, came out of prison and had no structure, and the club is what kept them out of prison for so long.
Right.
So I mean, it's not for everybody, but for certain people, it's the perfect spot to be. And guys, please, if you like this video, hit the like, hit our subscribe, go to Mooch's channel. What's your channel?
Mondays with Mooch is
Mondays
my
with Mooch.
channel name, and I usually comment. I'll like comments and stuff and share from your videos and mine, so it's not hard to track down. So hit a comment button on there, and I'll write right back to you and let you know my channel.
Any final words?
No, yeah, I guess my biggest takeaway is going to be that it takes a certain type of person to join a club, be committed to a club, and a lot of us have a ton in common, no matter what patch we wear. There's a lot of guys I grew up with, or especially from the band days in certain areas, that we had a ton in common, but because of the region or the area they grew up in, they went to a different club than me. So the takeaway is you can find someone you like and get along with in any club. Just make sure, like we were saying, you're checking those right boxes, making sure it's a good fit for you. Take the time, keep your eyes open, pay attention.
All right, guys. So please hit the like, the subscribe in the comment section. Give us tips. Like I say, we don't know everything or anything. We just have discussions about our experiences. There's a lot of guys that watch these videos that have awesome, like, years of experience and can put things and tips in the comment section. Till next week, much love and respect. Peace.
See you guys.